Now, I certainly will admit, and I've talked about it before, that there are a lot of teams that wish they had the Pittsburgh Steelers history in the Super Bowl era. A lot of teams that wish they had the performance that the Steelers have had under Mike Tomlin over the past almost 2 decades, right? Never had a losing season, went to 2 Super Bowls, won a championship, and yada, 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 yada. However, like, at what point in time are you tired with being just good enough to get to the playoffs with no real shot of hoisting a Lombardi trophy? Like, I know sometimes I say it and it sounds cruel. You got 32 teams in the NFL now, 31 losers and one champion. And if you're not contending for a championship or building your way to be a championship contender, then it's just a waste of time. It is. It just fucking is. That's not saying it's easy to win a Super Bowl or that everybody could realistically expect to ever win a Super Bowl, but when you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, your standards should be a little bit higher. And your standards shouldn't be, let's try to win 9 or 10 games and slide into the wild card and then get mollywopped in the first round of the playoffs. Well, it seems to be the accepted standard for this organization, and that's basically what they had happen again in 2024. And part of that could stem from the fact of they still haven't figured out life after Big Ben. Kenny Pickett ended up busting out for him in a bad way. He was sent packing. And now they bring in 2 quarterbacks, a Justin Fields and a Russell Wilson. And when you're in a situation where you have 2 quarterbacks, you can really honestly say you have 0 quarterbacks. And that's what they had. They started the season with Justin Fields. Offense didn't flow that well. Fields struggled with consistency as a passer, big shock. And then Russell Wilson finished off the year. You could say maybe the offense performed a little bit better under him, but he still looked kind of like he did in Denver. Not the same Russ that cooked, right? So it was like 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Both of them not good enough to get it done. The defense carried the way. They finished 10-7, but as per usual under Mike Tomlin in recent years, good enough to win some regular season games, good enough to slide into the playoffs, and then lay down in the wild card round. They got stomped by the Ravens 28-14, and frankly, the game wasn't even that close. So, like, what are we doing here? And you get to the point with the Steelers of, if you're going to persist in insisting on keeping Mike Tomlin as your head coach, even though it's been 17 years now since he's won a championship, 16 years, whatever the fuck you want to say, you either need to truly go all in or you got to bottom out and start this shit over. Because the true definition of insanity, as I often say, is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting the results to be any fucking different. Well, in some respects, it feels like the Steelers went all in, I guess, for 2025. They've got a new quarterback in the fold, at least for this year. They went the Aaron Rodgers route. What a unique pairing of Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin. I'll be fascinated to see how that dynamic works as we go through the 2025 season. They're hoping to catch lightning in a bottle. Aaron Rodgers, not with the Jets, better situation, better team, maybe hoping that he'll give them one last vintage season. Meanwhile, seemingly ignoring the fact that it's been several years since Aaron Rodgers truly played at an elite level. But there you go. They traded for DK Metcalf, Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith. Like, these are the types of moves that a team makes that says, we're going to try and take a run at this. We're going to try and make a run at this because the way it's been going hasn't been working. So they've been more aggressive than I think you've historically seen them in recent years, and that's what was needed. They signed Darius Slay and Juan Thornhill to beef up their secondary. Guys that are gone included George Pickens, Minka Fitzpatrick was part of that Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith trade. Najee Harris left. Dan Moore Jr. left. James Daniels left. Eladon Roberts left. So they certainly lost some guys, but you could see there was a priority on trying to bring in impact players and difference makers for this team. As you look at the NFL draft and the Steelers' approach there in round one, Derek Harmon, I think he's starting off the season injured, missed at least the first game. But they're hoping that he could maybe be the Cameron Hayward replacement in the long term. They didn't have the second round pick because of that DK Metcalf trade. Third round, they drafted Caleb Johnson, probably hoping that at some point he could supplant Jalen Warren as the starting running back for this team. You got Jack Sawyer in round 4. So this draft class in part will be defined by what DK Metcalf does come into the Pittsburgh Steelers. And looking at this roster this year, I think you have to love the pass rush ability that they have. It all starts with T.J. Watt, elite edge rusher. And you've got Cameron Hayward. One of those guys we'll be talking about down the line is like, was he enough to be a Hall of Famer? We know he was a really good player, but was he Hall of Fame, gold jacket, bust worthy? I don't know. But certainly still a valuable player for this team. I think he had like 8 sacks last year. Alonzo Highsmith and Nate Herbig. So this is a team that can get after opposing quarterbacks. Their run defense was really good last year. And I look at this year, the secondary with the moves to bring in Thornhill and Slay and Jalen Ramsey, assuming those guys are healthy, pairing them with Joey Porter Jr., Like, this should be an improved secondary unit. This should be a unit that does really well in the passing game, in theory. It's all on paper, mind you, right? But I think there's a lot of questions here for this team, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. The running game, no Najee Harris, not that he was great anyways. I don't think Steelers fans are exactly crying over him being gone. But Jalen Warren, Caleb Johnson, what are you going to get out of this running game? The receiving core after DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, you add in, obviously, a Jonnu Smith. Like, who else on the outside is going to be able to make some plays? Who else on the outside is going to contribute? The offensive line, you lose Dan Moore. James Daniels didn't play much, granted, but Broderick Jones wasn't exactly great last year. Like, what's he going to do in year 3? I worry a little bit about this offensive line, especially because you're talking about Aaron Rodgers. He's over 40 years old. You probably don't want him taking a bunch of big hits. What is Aaron Rodgers going to be? Like, is he going to be fully committed here and take this fully seriously? And is he going to come back and have one last vintage, like, peak Aaron Rodgers type of season? I'd be highly skeptical. I would strongly doubt it. And I really don't believe it. So it's a significant question. And then I also come down to Mike Tomlin, too. Like, at what point in time can you do better? At what point in time can you get above and beyond being a 9 or 10 win team? And it feels like, odd to sit there and criticize somebody for winning a bunch of games, but he's winning just enough games to be relevant without winning enough games to truly be a threat. That's what it comes down to. As we look ahead to the schedule for the Steelers, starting off with week 1, they got to go to the Jets. So Aaron Rodgers immediately facing off against the team he played for the past couple of seasons. That'll be fascinating. That'll be a nice media hype type of event. Week 6 through 8, hosting Cleveland, going to Cincinnati, hosting Green Bay. There's 2 divisional games mixed in there, along with a matchup at home against what is presumed to be a pretty good Green Bay Packers team, especially now that they've added Micah Parsons. That's a stretch of schedule for Steelers. Like, you want to get serious here, you got to find a way to win all 3 of those games. And especially for Aaron Rodgers being able to take on the Packers, revenge game type of situation for him, right? Assuming he's even the starter at that point. And then you look at weeks 13 and 14. They go to Buffalo and they host the Ravens. So there's a tough set of games later on in the year that they've got to figure out a way to take advantage. And I'm sorry, I just look at this team. One of these years, Mike Tomlin is going to have a losing record. I think I picked him to do it last year and it didn't happen. But, I just don't buy into this team right now. I think their offensive line is suspect. I question their running game. I question what, frankly, Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to bring to the table now, right? And yeah, they've added a bunch of names to the secondary, but those guys could take time to gel. There could be communication challenges, especially early in the year. Like, at some point in time, do the players start tuning out the message of Mike Tomlin a little bit? Yeah, like, I'm going to keep picking them every year until it happens to finish with a losing record. But I feel more confident in that pick this year than I do some other years. Like, why would you expect this to go much different than it did with Aaron Rodgers with the Jets, other than you want to say, well, this team is better. They certainly are, right? But even then, your ceiling is, like, you look at Fields and Wilson, were they that much worse than what Aaron Rodgers was in 2024? I don't think so. And they won 10 games. Yeah, I'm not buying it. I think this is an 8-win team, and Mike Tomlin finally finishes a year with a below 500 record.